The Lagakos and colleagues study that I mentioned earlier was an unusual study. It was, you could say, a cross-sectional design, and then the leukemia analysis was like a case control, a matched case control analysis within the survey respondents. But the surveys were done in an unusual way. They were almost entirely by volunteers. This was a project that was based at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and they used the normal telephone interview technique at the time, and they had scripted interviews so that the interviewers themselves were not in a position where they could modify the results or even the questions. They were simply reading the questions from a questionnaire. But some of the interviewers were actually family members, and others were residents of the town where the pollution occurred, and were certainly aware of the environmental contamination that had occurred prior to this survey being done. So that became a focus of criticism, especially by the chairman of epidemiology at Harvard School of Public Health, who raised that up as a red flag, as something that raised doubt about the validity or the potential for interviewer bias in a study like that. Lagakos and his colleagues wrote a response. This journal article was published in the Journal of the American Statistical Association in 1986. And there were critiques published simultaneously with the article, one of which was by Dr. Brian McMahon, at that time the chair of epidemiology at Harvard School of Public Health. So Lagakos and colleagues responded to the critiques in a rejoinder that was in the same journal, actually, further into the series of articles and critiques. And so Lagakos used, and colleagues used, the explanation that I just gave, which is this was a scripted interview. The analysis of the exposure was done blinded, in the sense that the patients who were, or the participants who were being interviewed, had no knowledge of where the water, or even what the water model was, whether there was such a thing that could identify where water went and whether they might have been exposed in their family history. So that was one argument that Lagakos made, which is that the exposure information was blinded, even if the people doing the interviews were knowledgeable about the potential for contamination, and they were also blinded as to who they were interviewing. So it's unlikely that most of the people who were doing the telephone interviews knew who they were talking to. They just had a phone number that they dialed and then proceeded to ask the questions.